Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unboxed. Today we're going to continue our theme of building the Black family, and we're going to talk about the Black family's savior. You don't want to miss it. Stay tuned.
I'm Dr. Robert Davis, family life educator and relationship coach, and welcome to Unboxed, a frank and straightforward conversation about relationships. We're going to talk about family, church, workplace, and all other types of relationships. Join me for the next few moments as we unbox the power and potential of relationships and help you to live your best life.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Unboxed. I'm your host, Dr. Robert Davis. So glad that you chose to join us. Again, here at Unboxed, we try to unbox the power and the potential of all relationships, whether it be workplace relationships, family relationships, church relationships, you name it. If you are in relationship with other human beings, we want to make sure that you are living to your best potential. And so talking about relationships, we have been spending the last couple of weeks just honing in on the Black family. And today I'm going to kind of go off a script a little bit. Tomorrow I'm going to pick up talking about the Black child. I'm going to talk about the Black child tomorrow, but today I'm going to kind of go off script a little bit. But before I do me a favor, please like, subscribe, and share. Like, subscribe, and share. Okay, let's jump into this. I've been reading some quotes from the book Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome by Dr. Joy DeGruy. I'm just going to read a couple of things that I've read before, but I think it bears repeating. She says the slave experience was one of continual violent attacks on the slave's body, mind, and spirit. Slave men, women, and children were traumatized throughout their lives, and the violent attacks during slavery persisted long after emancipation. In the face of these injuries, those traumatized adapted their attitudes and behaviors to simply survive. And these adaptations continue to manifest today. Survival mode. And unfortunately, the Black community in many ways has been in survival mode for the last 400 years. And I want to talk about how we transition the Black family out of survivor's mode. She says, as she talks about generational trauma, epigenetics, she talks about how these things are how trauma is even passed down through our DNA, etc. She says, and I'm reading again another quote from her book, what are the impacts of generations of slavery and oppression on a people? In order to begin to understand the magnitude of this legacy on contemporary African Americans, it is important to examine the diagnostic characteristics of trauma. What are the effects of trauma on human beings? What does trauma look like? How does trauma manifest itself? You think about a group of people that have been exposed for 400 years. And I read an article today, and I wasn't prepared to share it, but if you'll indulge me for just a second, I read an article today, and that is an international commission has found that anti-Black police violence actually constitutes crimes against humanity, and the International Criminal Court at The Hague is actually considering doing an investigation into America's violence against people of African descent. And I encourage you to look that up. But the criminal courts at The Hague, you remember we wanted George Bush for years. Everybody was talking about George Bush needs to be tried as a criminal, as a war criminal. Well, they're actually finding out that perhaps the American policing system is engaged in systemic crimes against humanity. So you take people out of slavery, and I'm going to read to you now a quote. This will come up on the screen. It's by Randall Robinson in his book, The Debt. Randall Robinson says, no nation can enslave a race of people for hundreds of years, set them free, bedraggled and pitiless, pit them without assistance in a hostile environment against privileged victimizers, and then reasonably expect the gap between the heirs of the two groups to narrow. Lines begun parallel and left alone can never touch. Wow, that is profound. Lines drawn parallel and left alone can never touch. So we put systems in place here in America relative to housing. We put systems in place here in America relative to policing to ensure that black bodies are constricted to certain locations, which is why when you're pulled over in certain neighborhoods by police in America today, it's commonplace for the question to be asked, what are you doing around here? What are you doing in this neighborhood? That's been common ever since I was a child, and I'm 46 years old. What are you doing in this neighborhood? Because policing has been designed to control the movements of black bodies, from the slave patrols to the municipal police of the 1830s to what we now know as policing today. It was started, was designed, and continues to be a way to control and to oppress people of African descent. And don't get that mixed up. And so, as I just read to you, Randall Robinson in his book, The Debt, talks about that. He talks about how you cannot release people from slavery. I remember listening to a documentary that was done, and I'm gonna get to some solutions in just a second. But I was listening to a documentary. It was a gentleman back in the 1940s who was traveling around the South. I apologize that I don't have the names for you. He was traveling around in the South, and he was interviewing people and talking to them about these were people who were slaves. So in the 1940s, he was talking to some of the last surviving living slaves. And one gentleman said that when slavery ended, they were just put out like animals. Like you just release an animal out into the wild and say, go for it. That's how slaves were released. They had no food. They had no shelter. They were completely at the mercy of the whites and completely at the mercy of nature and her elements. So all of that's the reality. And we have waited and waited as a Black community for a savior. We have waited. And every time someone has rose up who has said, hey, Black community, this is how you can empower yourself, whether it be the Black Panthers, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. Notice that they didn't kill Martin Luther King in 1963 and in 1965 when he was talking about, I've been to the mountaintop, I have a dream, I have a dream, a dream. They killed him in 1968 when he started talking about the economic empowerment of Black people. They killed Malcolm X because he was talking about us starting our own institutions, our own banks, and becoming economically independent. Every time, and they killed the Black Panther leaders because the Black Panthers talked about self-sufficiency. What our government wants is, and this is the only way capitalism can exist, is that you have to have a permanent underclass that will support those with capital. And so it is very important that African Americans remain in that position. We're not going to have a savior. We thought that we had a savior from 2009 to 2016, and we found out that in 8 years, there was nothing structurally that was done for African Americans. And people say, well, yes, we may have benefited from some of the healthcare reforms and some of the other things that happened when the economy began to improve under President Obama. But there was nothing structurally done. Put that quote back up there for me again, son. Put that quote back up there. Remember, it's not just enough to do stuff to help everybody, but you have to do things to specifically help African Americans, because as Randall Robinson says, that two lines begun parallel and left alone can never touch. So even if you do things to help both, you're not still pulling that lower class up any. You're just simply making sure that everybody doesn't just drop dead. And so nothing structurally has changed for Blacks. So where is our savior? Who is going to save the Black community? Who is going to save the Black family? No one. And I know that sounds depressing. No one is going to save the Black family. No one is going to save the Black community. No one from the outside is going to help us. I'm encouraged to see the International Criminal Court, which is at The Hague. I'm glad to see that they are really considering stepping in. I don't know how much they can actually do, but they're at least prepared to present charges against the American policing system and to investigate just how brutal they are against Africans, descendants of Africans in America. But even with that, we cannot hold our breath and wait for somebody else to come in and to save us. As I am trying to share in all of these presentations, I talk about these last several days about how we have to build up the Black woman. And I'm going to talk about what we have to do for the Black child and what the Black church has to do for the economic empowerment of the Black community. We have to take ownership. No one is going to help us. And I know that over the years, as I close, over the years, every time we've built, they've destroyed. Every time we've built, they've destroyed. But I want to remind you to look at the biblical story of the Israelites. They were destroyed by the Philistines. They built back up. They were destroyed by the Ammonites. They built back up. They were destroyed by the Assyrians. They built back up. They were destroyed by the Babylonians. They built back up. They were destroyed by the Romans. Seemed like they were going to lie desolate forever. And then they end up coming and building back up. We have to continue to build back up because the only savior for the Black family is the Black family. I'll say that again. The only savior for the Black family is the Black family. And we have to be intentional and deliberate about building ourselves up. It's wonderful if we get reparations, awesome if they pass certain laws and bills, but don't hold your breath. The Democratic Party, the Republican Party, all of them were started to support capitalism. All of them were started in their origin on the back and exploitation of Black people. And so now we have to realize that our savior is not a political party. Our savior is not a politician. Our savior is not somebody on television, not a movie star, nor an athlete. We are the savior that we've been looking for. And I'm not trying to, of course, as a Christian, I believe in Jesus Christ, but I'm also teaching that we have to be self-sufficient. Vote, wonderful, but voting is not going to save you. Being engaged in the political process, awesome, but that's not going to save you. Protesting and marching, great, that's not going to save you. What's going to end up saving us, and all those things are wonderful, and we should do them, but we're going to have to come together and become our own national think tank and be deliberate and intentional about building our wealth and building our communities, because the only savior of the Black family is the Black family. All right. I'm going to pick up here tomorrow night. We're going to talk about the Black children and about how we need to build up our Black children, which is really something that is powerful. I know we're all going to agree on. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure before I leave that you like, subscribe, and share. Tell your friends about UnBoxed. Check out our website. The website is right there. Send us your questions and comments. I look forward to hearing from you. Have a wonderful night and take care.
Seasoned with Grace, UnBoxed also provides healthy relationship training and leadership development for businesses, churches, and community organizations. For a free consultation to discuss your team's needs, please contact us at our website at swg-unboxed.org. That's swg-unboxed.org.